Hey everyone, what's going on? Mark here from TST Industries, back in the garage. And as you can see beside me, I have a 2025 Yamaha MT-07. This is the 4th generation MT-07 offered by Yamaha. And today we will be installing our TST LED front turn signals. Now, as you can see on the table beside me, we have a wide variety of turn signal offerings for many sport bikes, and today in particular, the MT-07. Starting with our Mech GTR front turn signals. These are a TST exclusive design, something you will not find anywhere else in the world. We also have some basic flush mounts with the true TST design cues, a one-of-a-kind look with a clear and smoke lens, really simple, a nice flush mount design. And then of course we have our pod turn signals. These are signals that stick out a little bit further than flush mounts, but still have that threaded stud, giving you a nice pod-like look, while giving you a nice TST exclusive design and functionality. And in today's video, I'll be guiding you through the installation process of our TST LED front pod turn signals. In this case, we are going to install our Quadrix sequential turn signals. Now, it is important to note that by default, none of these turn signals are plug and play. However, when purchasing them on our website, we have options to include the plug and play harness adapters within the product page, or you can even bundle the front pod turn signals together and purchase them, so you will receive the harness adapters, the mounting plates, as well as the signals of your choice. So when you are going through the purchasing process and as you're watching this video, please be aware of the various signal offerings we offer, all of their functionalities, the difference in how they mount, and of course, when you're purchasing, read through the product page so you fully understand what you are getting yourself into. Now, without further ado, this installation process is very straightforward. We will need to remove 4 bolts from each side of the motorcycle, and the installation process is mirrored from one side to the other. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right in. To begin this install, we first need to identify the area we're working on. In this case, we have the turn signal, and we need to gain access to the turn signal connector. Now, on these new generation MT-07s, the turn signal connectors are behind these upper tank shrouds. In order to gain access, the easiest way to do this without removing your entire tank cover is to remove this single bolt located at the top of the tank. This is a 4mm hex bit or hex key T-handle. We'll go ahead and remove this bolt. This is a standard thread bolt going into a self-threading rivet. As we can see here, there is a plastic washer on it. Please make sure you retain that. That will prevent your fairings from getting marred up when reinstalling any of the hardware. Now, at this point, we want to go ahead and flex this piece out of the way to gain access to the turn signal connector. Right behind this shroud, you can kind of see a bit of it here, is the ECU for this motorcycle. The connector on the left side of the bike is hidden behind that. So I'm going to showcase this. Just know on the opposite side, the connector is accessed by doing the same procedure. However, it is more accessible as you do not have the ECU. Let's go ahead and showcase both sides so you can become familiar with how to gain access to that connector and where they're located. So again, with this upper bolt removed, we're going to gently pry outward like so. And you can see here, it really frees itself up. We have a push tab fastener here that coincides with a rubber grommet located on the inside of this shroud. The connector we are dealing with is right there. It is that black connector. I'm going to use my tool to highlight it. Right here. Right here. 3 wires going into it. It is a black connector, and if you follow it all the way down, it routes around the frame tube and then into the turn signal. So again, on this side, it's much harder to see and access. Let's go ahead and showcase where it is on the opposite side of the motorcycle. So now we are on the right side of the bike. We are going to remove this same upper bolt. Make sure that the plastic washer is still on the threads. And in the same fashion, we are going to gently pry outward on this tank cover, like so. Now at this point, you can see a light gray connector. That is the turn signal connector for the right-hand turn signal. Again, the same exact process, just in a different location because you do not have your ECU, you only have your rectifier here. So at this point, you would go ahead and disconnect your turn signal. The routing is exactly the same through the, or behind the frame tube, and then into the back of the turn signal housing, just like that. Technically speaking, if you've worked on Yamaha signals, at this point, removing this turn signal is such an easy process that you actually don't need to remove much else. And I'm gonna showcase that, just how easy it is if you're familiar. No shrouds had to be removed. Your turn signal is free. We can go ahead and install our turn signals. However, if you are not familiar with that process, this may seem a little too easy. So let's go ahead. On the opposite side, we're gonna showcase the full disassembly of this shroud, removing it off the bike and taking your turn signal off. Now this is where it gets tricky on this side of the motorcycle because your ECU is here. There's not a lot of space for you to actually route the signal back in front of the tube support. So you kind of have to go towards the front of the bike, as you can see, if you can see that. So again, instead of going down directly below where the turn signal connects, if you go front or forward towards the neck of the steering stem and right above the radiator, there's a nice little nook there where you can route the cable out. Now we will go ahead and grab our 5mm hex key Allen key T handle. We will remove these two bolts holding this signal shroud in place. And there's one more bolt located at the bottom here. This is a Phillips head. Now it is important to note there are some press-in washers located here. If there's already damage to this shroud, there's a good chance that these pressed-in washers can be pressed out or just fall out, so please be aware. Now, unfortunately, the owner of this particular motorcycle did face a situation that a lot of Yamaha owners face with these new style turn signals, where they had a friend or family member hit it and it popped out. However, on this particular model, it actually did crack the signal shroud. So it is something to be aware of. A lot of new era Yamaha owners that have these turn signals complain about them all the time. You're obviously looking for an aftermarket option, and that's why you found us. But just something to note, as you're dealing with this, you can see we do have some damage located on the inside as well. Your signal shroud should not look like this. Now, when it comes to removing the signal, again, I showed it in a very easy manner on the opposite side, but in case you're not familiar with how these signals are secured, there's a small plastic tab located on the back of the signal, and then there's a rubber grommet that is wrapped around the signal. What you want to do is pry in an outward fashion, releasing the plastic tab from the rubber grommet. At this point, once it's free, you can snake it through. And now, carefully pry it outward, freeing the signal from the shroud. Let's go ahead and show that one more time off of the shroud to give you a better visual representation. But here we are with our signal. This is the plastic tab. Essentially, you need to pry outward, freeing the tab. So when you're using a tool, you would carefully pry outward on each of the tabs, freeing it and you're good to go. Now, we do need to retain this OEM grommet located on the signal. So just as I demonstrated, it's just a very simple pull and then it frees from the signal. We will be retaining this as it does need to be reinstalled on the signal shroud. So at this point, with the rubber grommet in place in hand and our signal shroud in hand, we can go ahead and reinsert this. It's just a kind of press to fit, bend to fit situation. You flex it into place and let it expand outward. And you can see here, it has sealed that in place. Now, as we pull our handy table in front of us, I would like to illustrate how we mount our TST LED pod turn signals and how it is different from our flush mounts and our mech GTR signals. So as I showed in the intro, pod signals are signals that stand off of the signal mounting point, have a threaded post, and are not flush mounts. So our flush mounts have that threaded post, but they sit flush against the surface, whereas our pod signals have a stalk and then the signal function. Case in point, our echoes, our BL6s, and our Quadrix turn signals. Now, we also have our Mech Evo pod turn signals. Those are a little different. I don't want to confuse you so for the essence of this video, we're gonna go ahead and highlight these three. Just know there are technically 4 options. So with these signals, we need to find a way to mount them into the signal mounting points. And on this particular application, you can see here that we have a giant signal hole and a very thin surface area that the signal actually has, meaning we cannot get an actual footprint on the signal shroud. So what we need to do is use our TST mounting adapter plates. Now we do have this kit available. If you purchase our front pod turn signal bundle for select Yamahas, you will be presented with a product page that allows you to select which signal you'd like, and it automatically includes the necessary plug and play harness adapters along with the mounting plates. So you get it all at once. But if you are purchasing a la carte, one by one, please keep that in mind. If you buy the signals by themselves, you will only get the signals. You will not get these mounting plates or the necessary plug and play harness adapters. Now, moving on to the actual assembly and installation of the signal on the signal shroud. We have our signal shroud here, and we know that it sits in this orientation. This is the front of the motorcycle. So what we will do is, in this mounting adapter kit, it is a 6-piece kit. We have 2 of these plates that have nice design cues and a raised feature on them. Then we have 2 of these flat plates. I call them large flat washers. And then we also include 2 small circular washers for different applications. Being that we're working on this bike, I do not have those on the table for this demonstration. What we will do is place this in the signal mounting hole on the signal shroud. And you can see here, it creates a nice seamless surface with some nice aesthetics that allow us to get a nice footprint onto the signal shroud for the turn signal. And we will have one of our large flat washers on hand. We will now go ahead and grab our TST pod turn signal. In this case, we are going to install our Quadrix sequential turn signals. These are yet another TST exclusive design. And we will remove the nut located on the back. This is a 13mm nut. So keep that in mind as you're searching for tools in your tool chest. We will remove the nut, and the washer will remain on it. Or actually, we will remove the washer, my apologies. And now we will route the wires out so we can free this locking hardware. Now with our signal in hand, we can go ahead and one by one feed them through the holes. Might be best if I show this off of the signal shroud. We will feed the wires, one connector at a time, through the mounting plate. bottom out. Now we will feed this through the signal shroud. So you can see here, we have introduced a nice clean surface, seamless look, somewhat texture and color match. It's just really inconspicuous. While holding the wires in place, we are going to go ahead and grab the large flat washer that we pushed aside, feed the wires through that, snake that down, and then the stainless steel washer that's included with the signal. And last, but definitely not least, the locking nut for the signals. Now, we end up with a material stack that looks something like this. We have the larger washer, then we have the stainless steel washer, and then the locking nut. We're going to go ahead and begin tightening on the locking nut until things start feeling a little tight. We want to make sure that we have even distribution on the large flat washer. Otherwise, it will protrude out to the opposite side. And this isn't something that you really want to tighten down too much. These are plastic components. They're ABS injection molded. They can flex. They are designed to give some give, but at the end of the day, they are plastic. And if you over tighten or damage them, that can result in product failure. So keep that in mind. Once you have it tightened down, you can go ahead and grab your 13mm wrench and just give it a nice 1/4 to 3/4 of a rotation. That will apply some preloaded force, locking this in place. So as you can see, our signal's good. Doesn't flop out and fall out like the OEM signals. We can look at it, and before that final adjustment, if you need to tweak the angle of which it is sitting, we suggest you to go ahead and do that. And if you need to, you can superimpose it over where it is supposed to mount, and that can give you a good idea of where your light spread will be. If you're one of those riders that wants it pointing more upward, you can do that. We always recommend perpendicular to the riding surface, to the ground. And once we're happy, again, just that 1/4 to 3/4 of a rotation, locking it in place. Now at this point, we can go ahead and grab our necessary plug and play harness adapters and continue along with the installation. On this particular signal, similar to our Mech GTR turn signals, the wire colors match and line up with our signal and our harness adapter. On some of our other pod turn signals, we have 2 wires going into 3 and they're different colors. If that is the case, you bypass blue, as that is the running light function, and you will go yellow to brown and black to red. If you have any issues with that, we do have our customer service team on standby. You can shoot them an email and they'll be able to help you out. Now, these particular signals, our Quadrix sequential turn signals, have a built-in running light function. That is where that 3rd wire comes from, and that is why we are going to use all 3 wires when connecting them with our harness adapters. So first we will peel back these silicone insulators, pull them off of all of the terminals. And we will go ahead and connect blue to blue, brown to brown, and red to red. As you are connecting, you want to feel and hear a little bit of a click, ensuring that they are fully seated. Try to pick that up on the mic. Just like that. At this point, with the connectors finalized and seated properly, you want to go ahead and feed the silicone insulators over the bullet connectors. I like to do this twist and push motion. That allows it to evenly disperse over the bullet connector, going over the larger surface and making full contact. At that point, while holding the end of the smaller insulator, you will feed the larger one over, sandwiching it in place, creating a nice sealed connection point. We'll repeat those steps on all 3 connectors. Now, it is important to note, this is one layer of security. If you are uncertain that you did this correctly, you don't feel like this is enough preventative measures to protect you against blowing a fuse or shorting your circuit, we always recommend applying electrical tape on these connectors in addition to using the silicone insulators. That introduces a second layer of security. During riding and normal use vibrations, even if you didn't install these correctly, these things can come loose. So just keep that in mind. We always recommend, if you feel unsure about how you perform this, apply some electrical tape on each individual and then bundle it together or leave them alone and just isolate them. Now at this point, we are 90% done. Now it's a matter of getting this installed on the bike. And we are going to do this in the reverse order of disassembly. So in order to prep myself, I'm going to go ahead and grab my 5mm tool, my small Phillips head screwdriver, and my 4mm tool. Now, on any normal motorcycle, we always recommend testing this connection before doing the installation. However, as we demonstrated during the removal of this connector, doing that is a little tricky. So unfortunately, we will have to route this around the frame tube and then we will go ahead and connect it. But that's not a huge problem. First, we will go ahead and grab one of the bolts that secures the signal shroud in place onto the radiator. We will grab our 5mm tool, put it on the head of the bolt. And we're gonna go ahead and just catch a few threads. Now we will feed this connector towards the uppermost part of the radiator, towards the neck of the steering frame. And you can see it just routes itself right through. We're already protruding out of the top. Now we can grab the connector and very carefully route the wires all the way through to the top of the frame. Now we will flex this out of the way and go ahead and connect. Be intentional when you're flexing this out of the way, but be very careful as well. This is plastic, so all of this, if you flex it too hard, it can permanently affix it in that location, or you can damage it. So just be intentional, but be careful. Now, when connecting these, you want to hear an audible click like that. That ensures that the locking mechanism on the electrical connector is fully seated. Now we can go ahead and test our turn signal. Now, as you can see here, we do have a functional turn signal with a running light function. That is exclusive to the North American market. Please keep in mind the running light function is something that is obtained by connecting to an OEM connector that has that running light function. In other world markets like Asia, Europe, Australia, and Africa, even South America, we have seen that those bikes do not have an OEM running light function. So just keep that in mind when you are shopping. We do have methods of introducing a running light connection on models that do not have that by default from the factory. When we go ahead and activate our signal, we get a super bright sequential turn signal function. So on running light, we are operating at 80% brightness, still extremely bright, but the moment you activate your turn signals, you now have 100% brightness and a sequential turn signal feature. We'll go ahead and cancel our turn signal, power down your motorcycle, and now we could worry about finishing this installation up. Now, what you can do at this point, if you are particular about how you have your wires routed, if you have a twist tie, a zip tie, or you still have that electrical tape on hand, you can go ahead and create a nice neat bundle, bundling this all together and then tucking it behind your ECU into this cubby where your connectors are. But as you can see here, if you just do it without any additional components, that's just fine as well. At this point, that choice is entirely yours. Now with our wires routed, our turn signal is connected, we verified functionality, we can finish the reassembly process. We will gently massage this entire shroud back into place. ensuring that we are locking into the push pin fastener located here. There we are. We will start at the top of the motorcycle, reinstalling the 4mm bolt with the plastic washer. Here you are. We will grab the other 5mm bolt and our 5mm tool, go to the lower signal shroud mount location. In all of this hardware, I always say bottom it out. Once you start feeling tension, stop. And then once all of the hardware is in and at bottom out, then we go through and perform the final tightening. So I've just bottomed out. Now we're going to go another eighth to a quarter rotation, providing some preloaded tension and ensuring we're not damaging the fasteners or the threads. Before we put all of our tools away and hop to the other side of the motorcycle to repeat this installation, we want to do one final check. We are good to go. You would now repeat this process on the opposite side as we showcased. Everything is exactly the same. You would remove the same bolts in order to remove the shroud. And obviously we did highlight the connector location and how to access it on the right side of the bike. And just like that, you have successfully installed our TST LED front pod turn signals, allowing you to remove your OEM turn signals for a more streamlined look. And depending on which signal option you chose out of the 4 pod turn signals we offer, you have introduced added functionality, case in point with our sequential turn signals, while retaining a plug and play functionality and having that running light function, again, depending on your world market. If you're interested in buying these signals, you want to see what else we have available for the MT-07 or any other bike that may be in your garage, we always recommend stopping by our website, tstindustries.com. The link to our North American spec front pod turn signal for this particular bike can be found in the description below. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, you want to say hey, let us know where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. Hit the comment field below, drop us a line. We'd love to discuss things with you, answer some questions, or even just say hi. Of course, if you haven't already, we don't know what's stopping you, but I don't judge. Hit that subscribe button, turn the notification bell on, and stay up to date with all the new and exciting videos we have coming out of the TST garage and out of the TST HQ. And last but certainly not least, be sure to stop by our social media pages, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or X, Threads, all username TST Industries. That is the go-to place to stay up to date with everything related to what we do, whether it's bike events we're going to be attending, new sponsorships, our race team, new product alerts, videos, even sales and specials. Our social media platforms are the go-to source for all of the fun stuff. For now, this has been Mark in the TST Garage. I thank you all for watching. If you found this video helpful, give us a thumbs up. That lets us know we should keep up the good work. For now, this has been Mark in the TST Garage. I thank you all for watching. I hope you guys ride safe. We'll catch you next time.
Yeah.